I'm getting early word that it could be Sussan Ley that's got the leadership. I have one very vague text, but it looks like it is Sussan Ley.
In a historic moment for Australian politics, Sussan Ley has become the first woman to lead the Liberal Party, marking a significant turning point in the party's 80-year history. This development follows the party's devastating electoral defeat, a loss that not only shifted the political balance, but also forced a deep reckoning within the ranks of Australia's once dominant Conservative force.
I think that's a big problem for the Liberal Party. They've got to have a really hard look at themselves. Sussan Ley may be a better option for them just because she's a woman, and that sends a message to a lot of would-be Liberal voters out there who've said, look, we're not prepared to support a party that is giving us 4 Liberal members of Parliament who are women, as against 40 for the Labor Party and counting.
One of the most annoying things of the campaign for lots and lots of people I know were the text messages from the trumpet of patriots. Have we seen the end of... Look, I spoke to someone this morning and I was serious when I said it. How good would it have been to see that 60 or 70 million go to cancer research or a good charity rather than this absolute wastage?
Yeah, absolutely.
And no seat in the end.
Not a seat. I mean, how much is that per vote they've paid or Palmer has paid? And, you know, I guess if you're one of Australia's richest men, one of the world's richest men, you can just indulge yourself like that. But that's what it looks like. It's just self-indulgence. And no one was buying it. And no one will buy it in the future either. You know, he was a flash in the pan. He should accept that and move on.
Internationally, we've got a new Pope, American.
An American.
There's an irony there.
Yeah, really interesting. And he seems to be moderate in the within the Cardinals, and that's worked well for him. It looks like there's going to be a fair bit of Pope Francis still in his approach to his ministry and how he's going to take the Catholic Church. I think they're all rather encouraging, to be honest with you. I think the more that the Church is seen to be connecting with people in the way, I guess, in which Christ wanted it to connect, you're going to be seeing it flourish. And I think the less it's caught up in debates about reproduction and other things, I think the better it is for the Church in the longer time. That's my view, and it's very personal. And by the way, I'm not a Catholic, so I don't really feel too qualified to speak about it. But I do think that, again, as the world goes through a period of great disruption and we see more and more poverty afflicting the world, we've got to have a papacy that recognises that and sets us an example to all of us wherever we come from.
Yeah, it's a powerful voice.
Ley's elevation to leadership isn't just a symbolic gesture. It comes at a time when the party is grappling with a clear identity crisis, struggling to connect with modern voters, especially women and younger Australians who have drifted away in recent years. Her rise signals a possible rebranding effort, one that hopes to show a more inclusive, contemporary face of the Liberals. But the question remains, will this be enough? Sussan Ley is no political newcomer. First elected to Parliament in 2001, she has served in various senior roles, including Minister for the Environment, Health, and Education. Her career has been defined by persistence, pragmatism, and a firm understanding of policy detail, all traits that have earned her both respect and criticism.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad, Rita, that you mentioned the Nationals and their performance in this election, and I'm glad that you mentioned Malcolm Turnbull, because to me, there's a great analog between what just happened here and 2016. The Liberals did not lose government, but they barely hung on. And they only hung on, and it killed Malcolm Turnbull through his entire premiership, that only with the fact that the Nats held every single one of their seats, and the Liberals went way backwards. And that's exactly what we had happen here again. but just to a more extreme version. Now, Peter Dutton, let's be fair to him, he's no Malcolm Turnbull, right? Let's.
He tried at this election.
Well, he tried maybe a little bit, but the problem was that there was no articulation of clear liberal values. And the thing is, liberal values are actually very straightforward. They're about liberty, they're about aspiration, they're about, sensible policies that help people get ahead, and it's about people making their own choices in their own life rather than, as the Labour and the Albanese government say, the government has to be with you at every step of your life. And so these are not complicated things, they're not hard to articulate. But my real worry here for the Liberals is that, they're going to take, as you suggested, Rita, entirely the wrong lesson from this. And they're going to go and they're going to say, oh, well, we need to have less and less difference between us and Labour, who has now got the chance to set the dominant narrative in the country, which is very dangerous. And I mean, Rowan, look, you come from the world of advertising. Product differentiation is what you need. And in a preferential system, in a country with a voting system like ours, there really needs to be clear air. If you go down this sort of small L liberal route where you just try and be all sensible centrist and figure that the voters will be attracted to you, not the other people, well, you wind up in the situation as, say, Mark Speakman is here, who's the opposition leader in New South Wales, who is proudly a centrist and says, oh, the party needs to go to the centre and dump this and dump that.
But leadership, especially after a defeat, demands more than just experience. It requires vision, resilience, and an ability to unify a fractured base. The Liberal Party's recent defeat wasn't just about unpopular policies. It reflected a broader disconnection from public sentiment, climate inaction, internal party divisions, and a perceived lack of empathy on social issues, alienated large swaths of voters. In several urban and suburban electorates, particularly among educated professionals and younger Australians, the Liberals were routed. It's these very voters Ley must now try to win back. Her appointment, however, is not without controversy. Critics argue that simply installing a woman at the top won't fix the deeper issues plaguing the party. Questions loom about whether Ley will have the freedom or the internal support to drive genuine reform. Will she be able to challenge the party's conservative old guard? Can she redefine the Liberal platform to address the demands of a changing Australia? One of her first challenges will be reshaping the party's stance on climate policy. For years, the Liberals have struggled with internal conflict between climate skeptics and moderates. With the public increasingly demanding stronger action on emissions and environmental protection, Ley's previous tenure as Environment Minister will come under close scrutiny. Can she pivot the party toward a greener future, or will she face the same roadblocks as her predecessors?
We have an update and we have a new leader of the Liberal Party. Sussan Ley will become the first woman to lead the Liberal Party. A tight vote by about 5 votes. She's beaten Angus Taylor in the party room, making her the Liberal leader moving forward.
And that means that, as we discussed earlier, there is a party divided. And the first thing that Sussan Ley will have to do on those numbers with such a narrow victory will be to bring that party room together.
Can I ask, Charles, what kind of direction would you expect Sussan to take the party in?
Oh, she'll be consultative. She's going to have to be consultative because with a team of 53 or so, it may get a little bit bigger with the numbers still coming in. She's going to need every one of them to be in any way combative against the Prime Minister. Look, Sussan Ley's got an incredible life story. Having immigrated here with her family, she trained to be a pilot. She's been a jackaroo. Is a grandmother, has a great backstory that I think we'll hear more of in the coming days. She had a history as a punk rocker, and
love it. That's my favourite part of her story.
Yeah, it can be good company when she's having a good time. So I think we'll see a bit of that. But look, Sussan Ley likes small business. I think she'll go back to being a small government, but also she's someone who has been willing to adapt and change to please whoever's in charge of the party at the time. So I think we're going to see her now in charge, and that's the big challenge of her. What does that look like?
And who does she bring on board as a deputy?
Well, we are still waiting for the numbers out of the party room from that deputy contest. So we had Ted O'Brien and Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, who were expected to stand for the deputy leadership. She would have preferred Ted O'Brien.
Given those numbers, it'll be Ted. Jacinta's won no friends in the Senate coming across. I think there's some doubt about, given that she was a National a week ago and is now a Liberal. I think that won't hold her in great stead going in, but we'll see. The party still has to vote.
So this has backfired spectacularly then, if this is the case, as you predict, that Jacinta Price hasn't won the deputy leadership. What does that mean for her future within the Liberal Party?
Well, it could mean that there is a lot to do for the new leader, really, to bring that party room together, particularly for, as we said, the women in the party room being divided as well. So that will be one job for Sussan Ley, but also for Angus Taylor. He will then have to decide what role he wants to play in any shadow cabinet, or just, you know, Sussan Ley will have to decide whether she wants to bring Angus Taylor and Jacinta Price into the tent, so to speak, and keep them close, or whether they end up on the out.
Yeah, I suspect they'll be brought in. Sussan Ley needs them as part of her team. So we'll wait and hold our judgment just how the move has gone in the long run, because there's a long run to go.
Then there's the issue of gender representation, both inside the party and in the electorate. The Liberals have long lagged behind Labour and the Greens in terms of female representation in Parliament. Ley's leadership could provide the momentum needed to recruit, mentor, and promote more women into winnable seats. But doing so will mean confronting entrenched attitudes within the party machine, a battle that may prove as difficult as winning over voters. Internationally, Ley's leadership has caught the attention of political watchers who see parallels with other center-right parties struggling to modernize. From the UK Conservatives to the US Republicans, traditional conservative parties are trying to figure out how to remain relevant in rapidly evolving societies. Australia's Liberals may now be positioned as a case study. Can a legacy party renew itself under new leadership without abandoning its core principles? As Ley begins her tenure, all eyes will be on her tone, her team, and her strategy. Will she double down on traditional values or chart a bold new course? Early signs suggest she's attempting a delicate balancing act, maintaining party unity while nudging the Liberals into more centrist, progressive territory. Public response so far has been mixed. Some see Ley's rise as a necessary shift, a long overdue embrace of modern leadership. Others view it with skepticism, seeing little change beyond the surface. And inside the party, unity is fragile. There are those who still long for the party's more hardline past, and they may resist any move they perceive as a betrayal of conservative orthodoxy. Sussan Ley's leadership will be tested quickly. Upcoming by-elections, party policy reviews, and national debates on cost of living, housing, and climate will all serve as proving grounds. For a party trying to recover from electoral humiliation, there's little room for missteps. This moment represents more than just a change in leadership. It's a crossroads. Sussan Ley has the opportunity to reshape the narrative, not just of the Liberal Party, but of Australian conservatism itself. Whether she succeeds will depend not just on her leadership skills, but on whether the party and its base are truly ready to change. Australia is watching. So is the world.